Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Josh with MitsuTimes. Today, my guest is Warren DeSouza. He is the owner and driver of the free Candy CSM. How are you doing today, Warren?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me on your show. It's a wonderful opportunity. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. You just got your first eights this year, right?
Yes, sir. I got it a couple months ago at the Shootout, in front of all of my peers, and it was such a wonderful feeling to get that. We've been trying, for almost 5 to 6 years to get to that point. So to be able to get into the eights for the first time, we went 880 at 156, if my memory is right. And it was just it was just so wonderful just to get that number, but more importantly to do it in front of the community and at the Shootout nonetheless. Yeah. So I was really happy about that.
There's nothing better than that.
No. That's just because it was such a high. As when I picked up the time slip from the booth, just an immediate engulfing of tears coming down. It's just, I'm just bawling my eyes out as I'm trying to drive this car back to the pits, and I was so overwhelmed with the emotion at that point that I had to stop because my visor was just fogging up with all of these tears. It was such a wonderful moment. That's awesome. I'm like driving back this vehicle back to the pits, and it's in one piece, and it was such an awesome feeling. It was years and years of work to get to that point, and to be able to have that accomplishment underneath my belt was just overwhelming. Absolutely overwhelming. So yes, for the first time a couple months ago.
So the Shootout was full of highs and lows for sure.
It really was. In our camp, in our little Antilag racing team, a couple of the other cars that were there, Jeremy's 2G, had a few issues where he was breaking drivetrain parts, and then my friend Dylan Shen with the Black Evo, he got into the eights as well. So definitely some serious highs. But the sport of drag racing can be cruel at times. It's very rewarding, but it's also very challenging. Yeah. We unfortunately in the elimination rounds had a bye run. And, I'm not going to just coast through. I'm going to go full tilt, and was off to this wonderful 60-foot. We had turned it up just a little bit more after the 880 pass. And just around the 200-foot mark, the car got a little loose, which we later found out got some water on the driver's side tires from a freeze plug coming out, and ended up going into the wall. So we ended up going, I think we hit the wall right around the 330 mark or a little bit past that, and coasted to just past the 8th. And that was really, really a big moment because, one, that occurred, in front of my peer group, in front of the DSM community. And worse than that, my son was in attendance at the event, and he had to watch that. So that was a real low. The car going into the wall, that's one thing, but just seeing the sadness in people's faces. Yeah. I don't think I've seen more men with tears in their eyes than I saw after that happened. And I'd never really want to see the community or my friends or my family, have that look of desperation in their eyes. And that's what was the biggest low for me, because cars can be fixed. It was really touching just to see how concerned everybody was, and also just kind of show how fragile life can be. You can go from one of the best moments of your life, and like a few minutes later or an hour later, you're you're at the lowest point
Yeah.
when it comes to things like that. So
It was
unfortunately, we hit the wall, but we move forward as
it
always.
was crazy to see everybody from the pits kind of swarm over there, even though they were saying, "Hey, get back off the wall." As soon as people seen it was you, they didn't care what they were saying.
Absolutely. It's my teammate Dylan Shen. He sent me a video when he was actually filming the run, and there was like a few seconds where the video is just he's just stalling because he's like almost in disbelief. And he told me, he's like, I just ran down there and got you. And I wanted to shout at him and say, you're putting yourself in harm's way. But man, I was so glad to see him, and he pulled me out of the car. And the minute that I got out of it, I just raised my hands, and then it was the most eerie thing. I heard, applause, because it must have been coming from the stands,
Yeah.
where folks were just, it was just maybe a sigh of huge relief to see me come out of the vehicle, because it just happened so quickly.
They really did.
And unfortunately, that's one of the risks of this sport that we all take. But I'm such a huge advocate for safety, and gosh, if it wasn't for the safety equipment in there, it could have been a lot worse. He could have rolled the vehicle. There's some pictures that some folks took, which I really haven't shared with the community, but maybe I will later down the line, just to kind of highlight some of the dangers of this sport. And it literally was on one tire. The driver's side tire was the only tire that was really touching the pavement. So we're really fortunate that the car didn't roll, or worse, from the fuel tank getting ruptured, that it didn't cause a fuel fire, because that would have been an even more dangerous situation.
Definitely.
So got to count our blessings for where we are right now, and it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah. So with that being said, Warren, the Free Candy machine is in a rebuilding stage. What can we expect the next setup is going to be?
Okay, yeah. So the first thing that we kind of did when we got home, we took the engine out, because there was some severe damage to the passenger side where it had impacted the concrete wall. So some of the damage that occurred is like a lot of that energy got transferred into the chassis. And there was one point in there was a crossbar that held the front motor mount that bolts to the block. There was enough force in there to actually rip a portion of the block out.
No kidding.
So it really transferred a lot of damage to the block. Now, the internals and stuff are all safe, and actually the car was still running at that point.
Yeah.
So I think that all of the rotating assembly is okay, but I really need to pull those components out of that block, or find another block set up to put things back. Now, the major changes that are occurring was the car's at a chassis shop right now, where they were able to put it on a table and straighten some of the suspension points. The bigger part with it is the tower had moved in towards the driver, just under 2 inches in both planes.
Wow.
So that's the biggest part right now that has been straightened. So that's a good thing. The bottom suspension part surprisingly moved just under 1/8 of an inch. So that was really lucky in that case, but because if that was scrap, the Colts, they don't have a detachable subframe in the front. It is part of the unibody. So if those suspension points are messed up down there, you might have the potential of scrapping the chassis. So fortunately, that's not the case here. So right now we're ordering up some chromoly for the front end of it, and we are beginning the tubular section for the front of the car. The part that I want to kind of change a little bit is to see if I can use some suspension parts that you may be able to find in the domestic world.
Okay.
Kind of like to almost have it as like the setups that you may see with a 3/4 chassis car. but where you can tie into the roll cage itself.
Yeah.
So we're kind of playing around with some of those ideas, because one of the things that I don't really like about the setup the way it was before is just how difficult it is to service the vehicle. It makes it challenging, if you were competitively racing, to actually do maintenance. Like if you had to pull a transmission out, to service that or anything like that, it would just take hours to do that on that car. So we're really trying to concentrate on making engine swaps, transmission swaps, or whatever may happen with that car a lot easier and a lot faster. So
wow.
trying to make decisions like that, it's like, well, if we put bars in specific locations, can we maybe remove them so that we can put an engine transmission in less than an hour? Those are the things that we're kind of thinking about right now to make it just easier to work on. So that's some of the big things that we're working on as far as fixing the chassis after the crash.
It's going to come out bigger and better then.
We're going to try, I'm really going to try and see, kind of pick up where we left off. Now, the wonderful thing about tubing all of this stuff is we can drop a little bit more weight off the nose of that car. Even though it is relatively light, it's about 2,310 pounds with me in it. So it's still a pretty light chassis for what it is. Yeah. But one of the challenges that we have with the CSM platform is it's such a short wheelbase.
Yeah,
it's like 92, 93-inch wheelbase. So it's good in some ways, but it's also challenging because of how the car loads and unloads when it's under power. So as far as like the power side of the car, I think we've kind of sorted out our engine program quite well. So I'm not really going to change anything with that. So we'll kind of leave it where that is. It's now trying to use that power as best as we can with this short wheelbase vehicle.
Okay. So Warren, going way back, what got you into the CSM platform in the first place? Because I know you and I have kind of talked about it, and you've talked about it before, that the parts aren't easy to get, and a lot of the stuff it has to be made from either a machine shop or by hand.
Absolutely. So I think we can go even further back than just why the CSMs. It's more along the lines of that style of vehicle. Now, what a lot of people might not know about me is I originally came to the United States from Kenya, Africa, and in Kenya, the safari rally is such a big thing. So in my youth, in my teens, when I was living in Africa, I would follow the safari rally, and I was fortunate to see people like Tommy Mäkinen in his Evo 6.
Yeah.
I got to see some of those world class rally drivers, and some of the cars that always piqued my interest were like the Peugeot 205s, the hatchbacks. Then they had some of the old Corollas that were there back then. But when I was in high school, the Starlets were a big car that were out in Kenya. Now, drag racing in Africa, not really a thing. So most of the folks were taken to the streets and hot rodding around. So the Starlet hatchback type of vehicle has always been something that has fascinated me. Okay. So moving forward, come to the United States, this is now in the early 2000s. I had a 1G DSM. I still do actually, and I had a couple other Mitsus, and one of my buddies said, "Hey, have you seen this Colt?" And I was like, "Oh, what is that?" I was like, "I've heard of a Cyborg," because in Australia and New Zealand and in Japan, the Colts or Mirages came as a Cyborg.
Yeah.
It was an all-wheel drive car, really cool looking, but it never made its way here. Now, that vehicle that I ended up picking up I didn't realize at the time, it was front wheel drive. It was an original turbo Colt. So those in themselves are really, really rare.
Huh.
So at that time, that car was such a blast. We were running, I think this was 2002, 2003. We were running bottom 12s with it.
No kidding.
With like a 16G setup. It was just light. You can just beat on it as much as you could, and like it was, the 1.6 liter, the 1.6 T motors, they're just fantastic engines.
Yeah.
They've 9-to-1 compression. Just out of the gate, the car is light, and they just go. And ever since then, once you have a Colt or a Mirage or any of these things, it's almost like you get into like a cult following of them. Once you have one, you just feel like you just need to do more with them. So that's kind of how it progressed for me. It's just like this passion for having this small hatchback vehicle that's got short wheelbase, and you can throw tons of power into it. And it's hot rodding 101, right? Pick the smallest chassis that you could and put the biggest engine you possibly can in it. So that's kind of where I had the love for the CSMs, and what led me later down the line in, I think it was around 2010 or so, 2011, when I picked up Free Candy, if you would, as a chassis. So the other part that I like about the CSMs, they are unique in the 4G world. There are not a lot of people that mess with them. I hate to even say this, but they kind of look aggressive too. As aggressive as a grocery getter type of car can look, they just have this mean stance to them.
Definitely.
And if you do some wheels on it, or maybe go with the JDM front end, they just look really tough. And that's kind of what I love about it. It's that big underdog type of vehicle, right? You'd never expect it to do what it does, but boy, if you line up against somebody with a 4G or a Colt that's got some power underneath it, you're going to really hurt some feelings. So that's why I just love the CSM platform. They're just great.
When you talk about them looking aggressive or looking fast, even not moving, I think about Matt Wheatley's CSM and just seeing it in person and thinking, man, that just looks so. It's never even made a pass and look at it.
Exactly. Matt and I are really, really good friends. The CSM community is a really tight-knit group, and looking at his car and some of the things that he has done with it, or that he's doing in the build process, it just looks so good. It's just mean looking, and
absolutely.
And he's gonna, once he gets going with it, he's gonna see a lot of success. He's a guy that came down from the Evo platform. He's not a newbie when it comes to making horsepower, and he too has a love for Colts, and I can't wait to see what that car does. It's going to be fast.
Absolutely. My eyes are glued to Facebook for when he makes his first pass.
Most definitely. He's a good dude. Absolutely.
So tell us about the Free Candy machine when you first bought it. It was, like you said, that 1.6 turbo front wheel drive. Was it pretty much stock though?
No, actually. So that first Colt that I was telling you about, that was a car that I had in the early 2000s, and I ended up getting rid of it. So I tried to actually find it back, and I lost track of it somewhere in Tennessee, and then it must have gone to a scrapyard or something. But man, the Free Candy right now, I bought that in 2011, and I had a few other DSMs that I was trying to campaign to get into the nines and stuff, and it just never really panned out. So I got the car from this fellow down in Missouri. He had started doing some of the chassis work on it, so really he was in the process of all-wheel drive swapping it. So he had some of the suspension points and that type of thing in there, but there was no engine, there was no interior, there was nothing in there.
Okay.
It was just basically a shell. So, I think circumstances led to him like not wanting to finish it, or not wanting to work with the car altogether. And he's like, I'd like to sell this. And the price he was asking was a good price. I think I paid something like $1,200 or $1,300 for this thing.
Wow.
But it was a project. It was, no brake lines in it. There was no interior in it. There was no front end on there. No fenders. It it was just a mess, right? Not on his fault. It was just in the middle of a build part, and he kind of maybe just lost interest in it. So that's when I picked it up. It didn't really have anything in there. Now, one of the nice things about being a DSM hoarder is you have lots of parts, right? So it's like, I can go ahead and just start throwing some of these parts that I've got laying around and just throw it into this thing, and it'll take me back to when I had my first Colt. Just a fun little vehicle that I can carry my buddies in, and then we can, with the slicks in the trunk, and we can go to the racetrack and just have a blast and drive back home. But the difference being now that it's all-wheel drive, so we'd actually have traction when we're going down the track, versus these cars when they're front-wheel drive. Boy, they're torque steering monsters. They're all over the place, but they're so much fun. So it's like, around 2011 was when I got it, and I think it took about a couple of years before I got it squared away. They said some of the suspension stuff that was done to make it all-wheel drive didn't quite line up. So like the rear shock towers at that time had to be cut, because when you all-wheel drive swap these cars, you're effectively using 1G DSM components, for the rear subframe, etc. And there was no nat fab back in the day to give you the little spacers to make the 1G components work. There was none of that back then, So you really had to kind of measure a bunch of times to try and make sure that this little shoebox actually goes straight and true. Because honestly, they came with this particular chassis was the 1.5 liter. So it was the automatic 1.5, it wasn't even the turbo one. So there was even less structural bracing in there than what the turbo ones have.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that was a big challenge there to try and get everything squared up. But yeah, that was around 2011. I think the first drive we had with it was in about 2013.
Awesome. And you said at the time you were trying to get some DSMs in the 9s. Was that kind of your goal when you first got the car, was to get it in the 9s?
No, not at all. It was one of those situations where I wanted to use this as more of something that I could drive around on the street. Go back to those times when it was simple. Getting these 4G vehicles into single-digit territory. It's easy for some people, but for myself, it was always a challenge. It was, you could never put the A to B pass. It was either you break a transmission, or you lose a clutch,
right,
or you bend a rod, or do something or the other that was causing you not to get to that point. So I kind of wanted to take it back to just being fun, just when I would just have a big old grin on my face when you're skating all over the track with this short wheelbase vehicle.
Yeah.
That's really what the major goals were. Is just use some spare parts that I had laying around and go have fun with it.
I get that a lot on this podcast. I feel like a lot of people say, like, man, I love that it's a race car, but I do miss back when I could just drive it.
Mm-hmm. There's something about 11 second or 10-second street cars, man. They're so much of a blast because you get to feel all the pieces for it. You can go to the grocery store or take your family for ice cream in them if you have enough seats in it. It's just, there's just a different sensation. Race cars are fun. They are definitely controlled machines, right? Controlled weapons. Like if you mess around with them, you could get seriously hurt. But I also think that they take so much work and so much of your time and your money in order to keep them going. And sometimes I think folks get they just kind of lose sight of those things. It's like, what were the reasons why you got into this in the first place? And you just start chasing the horsepower. You just start chasing the ETs and the times, and you forget about why is it that you're even doing this. You're doing it just for that, which is fine too. But just the pure enjoyment of it. as I get older, I think about that more than anything else. Is why are you doing this? Is it just to get numbers or time slips, which is cool, or is it just just to put that big grin on your face? And that's
Right.
something that most people or most gearheads will attest to that. You'll be by yourself in that car, and you'll make a pull, and you feel the boost coming in, and you can feel that sensation in your chest,
Yeah.
and there's no better feeling than that.
Some of my favorite videos in the world are in cab after they just made a clean pass, and just to see a racer celebrate. Nobody's there. They're just
Nobody's
in
there.
that zone by themselves, and just to see them, celebrating a good pass, that's it just warms your
It
heart.
it really does. It's just the emotion of it. I'll go back to my 8 second pass that we just did a couple of months ago. I got through the beams, and I was like, gosh, that feels pretty good. Like, oh, there's no rod out of the block. It's still under its own power. Okay, let's turn over here and drop it down into a gear. And you're approaching that time slip. Trying to move the window net out of the way, and you get to slip, and gosh, man, that moment when you see the number, it's just like, yes, you're still just chasing paper or a time, but it's that overwhelming sensation of, oh my goodness, all of that hard work, all of those sleepless nights,
Yeah.
all of that drive or the will to continue when you blowing up engines left, right, and center, or breaking things, and to just see you accomplish a goal, it's amazing. But it always reminds me of the process that it took to get there, and that's the part that I think gets missed sometimes.
Yeah.
Is
For sure.
the emotion for me? It's coming from what it took to get that slip to say that number.
Yeah.
That's the powerful part that I think, and it's great to see like other racers when they're excited, they get their PBs. They that emotion, you can relate to it when you've done that, and it's the same emotion when you pass those milestone points.
Yeah.
When you get the 11s or the 10s or the 9s or the 7s or even the 6s, like you ought to ask Devin what it felt like when he got in the 6s. I'm sure he'll say the same thing. It's the same sensation all the way through.
I was at World Cup. I watched Devin run a 6 second in person, and then I wanted to come over and congratulate him. He lost that race and got out of the car and he just went, yes.
Yeah, that was a big deal for Devin. He wanted to get that 6 second pass in front of the world, in front of the crowd, and also for himself. And he's such a huge motivator. That guy, he's at the top of the ladder in the community, and just to even talk with him in person about what he enjoys about what he does, and it's just like, it's just fun for me.
Exactly.
This is a car for me. It's not for my shop or anything like that. It's for me
Right.
and my personal accomplishments, and for his team. And it's so wonderful to see the passion and drive that's there, and seeing him get to those points. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I love, when I had him on the podcast, and he was like, my shop doesn't sell DSM parts. There's no way we would sustain ourselves. So
Right.
so this car is to make me happy.
Oh gosh, isn't that a wonderful thing? I mean, it kind of sucks that that the DSM platform or the 4G platform is dying in some ways, but at the same time, the passion and drive that you see in the community that's here now, it's huge.
Yeah.
People are into it. It's almost cult-like, where everyone talks about their setups. Everybody is motivating others to do better. That's a very rare thing to find in the automotive world. So it's nice to see, even in the big shops that are still there, that are campaigning some of these cars.
Yeah.
See them still try to push the envelope and show the youth that are coming behind us, what you can really do with this platform when you really put a lot of effort into it.
So, Warren, I wanted to talk a little bit. I know your 8 second shootout pass That was still on the Borg Warner S476, right?
That's correct. Yep, we've been using the Borg 476, gosh, now for almost 5 years, and that turbo really came from Kevin Kigley, and Kevin is a huge person in my corner, and for the success of this car. And that was a turbo he had used way back in the day on his front wheel drive vehicle. And one of the things that he did, well, he tells me is that, okay, I've gone 163 or something like that, or 167. I can't remember the exact time with that turbo.
Mm-hmm.
It should be plenty to get into the eights. So he's like, we're not going to change the turbo on this car until you get close to those times or that type of mile an hour. So it's one of the things that kind of keeps me kind of curbed down a little bit. He's always the voice of reason. He's like, we just can't throw power at this thing all the time, Warren. We need to like utilize things as efficiently as we can. And I really take that to heart. It's like you can get the newest and greatest parts that are out there, but are you utilizing what you currently have to its maximum potential? Mm-hmm. And yeah, the Borg has been good to us. They're one of those old turbos where you can run mud through them and they'll still work. So it's a cast 76 millimeter wheel. It's a divided T4. We've had that on the vehicle since 2017.
Oh wow.
So it's been on there for quite some time. We've rebuilt it, I think, once. So it's really it's quite a workhorse for what it is. There are turbos out today which are infinitely better and move a lot more air, and they're even in smaller packages. So once I get to the 160s or close to it, I'm not going to get to Kevin's 167, whatever number he got in his front wheel drive car, because I consider it the K factor, right? Well, I was like, Kevin, you can get that on your cars, right? But I'm not going to be able to get it on mine. So you need to give me at least a 5 mile an hour or 7 mile an hour leeway on that. Yeah. So we always have a good laugh about that.
The aerodynamic differences in those two cars is astronomical.
Exactly. With the Colts, you're trying to push a brick through air. There is no aerodynamics with it, but we get it done.
Good. So, Warren, thinking back, what was the setup when the car first broke into the nines, and what year was that, and what was kind of going on in your life that kind of led to that 9-second pass?
Wow. So that was I think that was the first year we had the auto in it. So at the time, prior to getting to the nines, we were we were trying to campaign the Colt just as a fun vehicle that we could take to our local track. We used to have something called, it was like the Sunday Drags or something like that, which was kind of a series bracket racing type of thing. So at the time, we had a 3065 on that. I got to give a big shout out to Robert at Force Performance. We had the 3065 on there, and we were really trying to get in the nines with the stock block. At that point in time, the Colt was a manual. So really struggling to get to it. We ended up stopping when I lost the transmission after we were attempted to go, and our best time was I think it was a 10-1 at 138 with that 3065. Probably the best setup I've ever had in that Colt. It was fantastic. So then we said, well, let's see if we can go a little bit faster. We'll get this Borg from Kevin. We'll go ahead and throw that in the vehicle. And at the time, it was like, well, do I continue going down the manual path? And looking at the cost of PPG stuff as well as clutches that would be needed for me to go into the nines, it just wasn't possible. So we went to the auto setup. At that time, that engine was a steel rod engine, so it had Oliver rods in it. The cams we were using were S3s. All my motors are built through Force Engineering, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So, your standard wet block type setup that had Weisco pistons in it, let's see, the Oliver rods. We were running S3 cams. We were on a Shurafab header at the time. And we decided, well, we got the auto inside over here. And the first, again, we were trying to get into the nines for now, I'd say 6-7 years. Not even on this chassis, but on other vehicles, right? I just could not put A and B together. At that time, we were spraying a lot of nitrous. We were spraying, oh gosh, I want to say 140, 150 shot of nitrous on it. And the fuel, the management system on this car, we were using an Evo 8 ECU. so it's really stout ECU for what it is, but there really isn't a lot of data logging that comes with it. Evo scan is there, but it only does so much.
Right.
So every time that I would get into the vehicle, even when it was on a manual with the board, I would just grab the man button. We used to call it the man button for a reason, because it was like, oh, it feels great. I'm just holding on to this thing. So anyway, we were at a mile and dragway. It was late in the season. I think this was in 2017, late in the season. And this was with the auto. The car comes up on the converter, real nice. We were still running, we were running C16 back then.
Wow.
And the fuel system on it was just 2 Walbro 255s. You wouldn't believe that. So making this pass, it's like, the car gets a little bit squirrely, comes out of the groove. Like, I'm grabbing the button. I grabbed the button probably from the 60-foot point on. And it was on a rip, right? And car then, I think around the 1,000-foot mark, we lost an intercooler pipe. And that intercooler pipe then took out the oil feed line. So now there was smoke and stuff everywhere, right? So anyway, I'm coasting all the way through and, get to the end of the track. The boys had to come and get me on the trailer. Like, let's go pick up this slip. And you pick up this slip, and it's a freaking 930.
What?
And we're like, wait a minute, are you kidding me? We've been trying for so long to get in the nines, and we blast through it. It was just unbelievable, right?
Wow.
We could not believe what was going on. On that pass too, the converter bolts were coming out of it. It was just a mess. Oh my goodness! But we were just in disbelief. Just couldn't believe that car did that. So we're like, okay, we're onto something. If we can get into the nines like that, maybe the eights are possible now, and maybe we should start shooting for that. So that was a huge accomplishment. And it goes as a testament to what drag racing is all about, right? You struggle for years on end, and then you're rewarded in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it's the planets all lining up, if you're superstitious, for you to get those numbers.
It's that little morsel that makes it all worth it, though.
It's like golf, It's like you take your best, you take that one shot, and then you're like, oh, that's perfect. That's what keeps me coming back.
Yeah.
So that was the first time it got into the nines. I think it was like 2017 or something like that.
So you didn't just break into the nines; you rocketed into the nines.
Yeah, that was awesome. It was the belief was back, right? It's like we always have that level of passion to continue to do better.
Yeah.
But when you get a win like that, you are just on a whole nother high, which was great for us.
Heck yeah. So Warren, you're like we said, you're kind of in a rebuilding phase with the free candy machine. This is kind of your chance to start over on some parts. So, if you could go back, is there any part of this build that you would do differently that maybe somebody could avoid the same mistake or anything?
I don't think that I would change anything if I had to start all over again. What I really advocate for is going through the process. The turbo setups, for example, that have been on this thing, we're going from like an 18G to a 3065, then we had a 35R, then we went to this board. And all along the way, those iterative steps really taught me a bunch of how this chassis behaves, how it reacts to things, how it behaved without a roll cage, or how it behaved with the roll cage. Just all of those little pieces really brought it to where it is now, Now, even though I'm in a rebuilding phase currently, I'm doing things to it that make it easier to work on, but the steps that it took to get here, I don't really think I would change it. Like now the vehicle is on a Haltech system. So, I'm a bit of a data junkie, and I think about all those years that we were running, with management systems like a TMO chipped ECU with an AFC. We went 149 with that setup in another vehicle. This was back in 08, 09. And to think that you could do that with that old tech without all of the knowledge, that was impressive for me. Now with the Haltech setup inside there, we can look at every single parameter and make educated decisions for it. So as far as major things, I would say that people should consider about is your engine setup. Your engine setup is really what matters. Now, you can always be at the ragged edge of the components that are in there. So like in my case, having a steel rod in there, we were spraying all the nitrous that we could into it. It just wasn't good to those rods, So we bent rods, I think, 2 or 3 times in that car. We've split cylinder walls. We've done things like that. So if somebody was going to try and come in, or ask me, what would you change mostly about it? Like, well, I would have probably started with a concrete block or something like that to kind of minimize some of those breakages, because that's unsafe too. Ejecting rods and that type of thing, it's just not cool at all. So, yeah, that's one of the big things I would say in there.
Okay. So I know, I think back to, I think it was Thursday night or Friday night at the Shootout, and you were having some transmission problems, and it seemed like every time you went out there, it was bogging at the start. And I was thinking, like, man, I'm Warren's out there taking swings at it, even though he's having problems, and then here comes the 8.8 pass. So,
right.
So what is it about this car that keeps you motivated to, not just keep going with the car, but to keep pushing it, further and further?
Oh wow, that's a deep question, but I'll try my best to answer it. I think it really goes back to just the individual, right? Like there are many things that motivate me, but like I look at motivation as something it's just fleeting, right? It's the discipline behind things, I'll say that my son is definitely a big motivator for me to keep pushing, because when you're a parent and you have a young one that's looking at things that you do, if you try and give up on something like that, you're then instilling those values in him, saying, "Oh, it's okay to quit."
For sure.
And that's something that I just can't bring myself to ever do, is to give up. It's just not in me. It's not in me at all to do that, and I try to emulate that as best as I can so that I can be a good example for him. That's one of the things that motivates me. The other part with it is I have a severe underdog mentality, which makes me want to try really, really hard. And that's the beauty of drag racing, right? It's that sport where even if you ran a 2-second quarter mile time, you're gonna think to yourself, how can I run a 1.99?
Right.
It's one of those sports where you can never be satisfied
100%.
where you are. So like you talked about the Shootout, for example, we're having some issues where the car was literally endoing every pass. Like, what the heck is going on with this thing? Now, I am so blessed to have folks like Kevin and Tyler and Jeremy in my corner to like really troubleshoot things, and we ended up finding that it was an engine protection parameter that was in there that was basically going from all the boost to nothing, and that would just cause the car to unload severely at that point. But it took 3 passes to figure that part out. So just trying to like always look at those aspects of where's the problem and how do I fix it? Because that's what this is about too. It's just problem solving. I think most folks that might be in drag racing or in the automotive world of racing, they're just big problem solvers.
Yeah.
You just happen to pick the medium of cars as your channel to solve problems. So those types of things really motivate me to try and keep going with this car. To see, well, if I do this, maybe it would go straighter, or maybe I should tell Jeremy and Kevin to forget about their fancy computer over there, and when they put nitrous is applied to the engine, and let me just get my man button back. It's things like that. And I really want to showcase what it takes to get to this point. I think that's something that we don't see too much in the community. We always see all of the glory. We all see all the PBs and the bests, and one of the things that I like to show, through my little corner of the internet, is what are some of those struggles to get where you are. Mm-hmm. You just really just show people that, okay, you split a cylinder wall over here, or you threw a rod, or you bent a rod. Why did that happen? How can you use the data that you have from that run or that dyno pull or whatever it may be to figure out the problem and make critical decisions so that it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what's so great about our community is, a lot of people within our community, they joke around about the, swapping engines out in the hotel parking lot, or, doing this or doing that. But it's when you see something happen, like, a rod get pushed through a block or something like that at the shootout, they could easily just put that car on the trailer and go home, but they don't.
Correct. Yeah, you just don't do that. It's just like you're like, well, we're here. Let's go ahead and put our brains together and try and solve stuff. One of the things that I'm truly blessed to be part of is a team of people. Our little Antilag racing team. It's just a group of guys that we just love wrenching on stuff and seeing each other succeed. And like at the shootout, Jeremy's 2G was having problems where he's twisting subframes. Mm-hmm. This has been the second shootout where we've literally welded inside the trailer in order for him to make another pass. Wow. It's like, who does that? Let's just cut off some steel that we've got laying around to see if if Jeremy can go back out there. Well, like with Dylan's Evo, for example, we're running in this heat where you're in a 1050 index, but the car that's coming up against you, that's really an 8-second car. What can we do from an engine perspective or a tuning perspective in order for you to get that win? Gotcha. And the whole group kind of comes together. Even other people will just come together to help us and give us ideas on what to do.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a wonderful thing to be part of a community that just wants to help. They just want to see you succeed, and that's so powerful. It's also very, very motivating to look at that and say, you know what, I'm going to do it not just for myself, but for my team, for my brand, and just show what hard work it takes to get here, and anything is possible.
Definitely. This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by Action Clutch. You'll find Action Clutches in vehicles of all power levels, from stock cars to grassroots racers, all the way up to 1,000 plus horsepower drag cars. They offer 8 different stages, from Kevlar copper organic all the way to triple and double clutch kits. All Action Clutches have been handmade in LA by hand for the last 60 years. Check out all their products they have to offer at actionclutch.com. I imagine that the Free Candy machine will be back up and running before the race season. Is there any goals for 2023 now that you've broken to the 8s?
Yeah, I'd really like to kind of get back to looking at more data on passes and on pulls, because I enjoy that aspect of it. I'm blessed to be able to design components for this car that people have looked at and said, hey, I like that. Can I get that for my car? So I really use my car as a bit of a platform to test different things that maybe people might like and people might want to have on their vehicle as well. So that's kind of a goal for me for 2023 is kind of continue to run to get that in the eights, continue along that path, maybe develop a few products along the way, and really maybe just have another vehicle in our little group that we can take to the track and have a good time with. For us, it's a whole production, right? And like the racing part of it is just one aspect. It's the environment around it. We're folks that love to cook. So whenever we go to the track, we've even got spice cabinet inside of the trailer. That's really important.
Yeah.
Got to have your spice cabinet next to your methanol. So it's a big production for us. So we'd love for 2023 to kind of continue along that path, not just with the Colt, but also with Jeremy's 2G and Dylan's Evil, and as well as Andy's 1G. So that's really our big plans for 2023. I like to call ourselves, we're like a little local rock band. We go out to tracks or events, and we're there to entertain. We're there to also get our PBs, but I think we're also a group that just think about your local rock band. Going out there, having a good time. Selling some merch, eating some food, hanging out with your buddies, and try to put on a good show, and talk to people that may follow you or may be interested in your story, and just have a good time.
Yeah, for sure. So Warren, with you're number 12 on the CSM list, and just looking at your 60 foot would put you at number 4 overall. Do you have any long-term quarter mile goals? I mean, there's even though it's less than a second, you're not too far off from the quickest CSM.
Right. No, I definitely have some quarter mile goals. I think my major goal, and I'd said this a long time ago, because it was so unattainable in my head. It's like, I'd really like to run 7s on a 24.5-inch tire.
Okay.
I don't think, to my knowledge, I don't think that there's been any 4Gs that have done that. That in itself offers a whole bunch of challenges, because of gearing and just the lay of the car, like being the short wheelbase that it is. I look at the MitsuTimes list that's there, and I think the number one person is an Evo, and I think it's out of the country from Australia or New Zealand, I think.
Yeah.
And that I look at that number now after this thing has ran that 880s, and I'm like, you know what? That's not unrealistic anymore to be able to do that.
For sure.
Now, the funny part about it is I said this when I was in the 10s way back in the day, and it's like, man, this is a 9-second car, and then I took years and years and years to get into the 9s, and the same thing when I got into the 9s, I'm like, oh, this is an easy 8-second car, and then it took years and years and years and years to get into the 8s. So, I might be kind of jinxing myself a little, but I think my major goal or long-term goal, if I can do anything, is get into 7s with the 24.5-inch tire. That's got a whole list of complications with it, but I think that's not unattainable. What I'd really love to see is to see some of those guys that are, those top 12, maybe pull their cars out of retirement or something like that and come back and keep pushing forward, because I think there's so much more potential with technology that we have today to go faster and faster, from ECU control to turbocharger selection that's out there. It would be great to see some new blood in that community. Even you've got Matt Wheatley, you've got Aaron Anderson, I think you got Matt Corritt, you got Raven Colt that's out there. All those guys are still pushing, but that's less than 5 people that are in there. So Yeah, so I think I can. I think I'm a good contender for getting up that list, but
Definitely.
time will tell as we progress.
I mean, already a quicker 60 foot than the number one person. So
That's a testament to Important Kevin. For your listeners that don't know who Important Kevin is, kid from Kigley Racing, that man is a genius. And without him, I'd be lost. So some of his tuning strategies and setups of the chassis really take advantage of power management and using that as efficiently as possible. So big kudos to him on that.
yeah, definitely. The short track game is there.
And the wild part about it is there are things about that that short wheelbase that help you, and then stuff that doesn't. It's still on a stock T case. It's also still on a stock 4-bolt
Wow.
that's in there, which is wild to think about that. I'm playing with fire for sure, but I try and tell folks it's like with the 24.5-inch tire, you're applying a lot less mechanical leverage to the pavement compared to the 26-inch tire that most folks use.
Yeah.
So that in itself helps keep your drivetrain parts in one piece. You don't need to go with larger stuff. The flip side about it is once you apply power, the car wants to go left and right. So it's like pick your poison with that one, right?
Got to find a happy medium.
Yes, sir.
So, Warren, I know you got a fleet of the Antilag cars, and you also have a very beautiful 3000 GT VR4. I was hoping maybe you could share some of those stories.
Absolutely. So I'll talk a little bit about the team cars. Hopefully one day those guys can come on the podcast and share their personal stories with things. But since I'm here, I might as well talk a little bit about it. So in our little Antilag racing team, we have Jeremy Williams that has got that beautiful white 2G of his. That car is a Force Engineering blocks, a steel rod engine. It runs the 3065 on it, the one that I went 10-1s with.
Oh, wow.
So he runs that turbo because he and I had a side bet way back in the day that he was going to beat that 1014 time as a stick shift with his 2G. So he's still trying to campaign on that. He's been having drivetrain problems with the manual stuff. So this winter we're going to move to an auto setup in his car. So that car's got tons of potential, to run just single digits, and hopefully he'll be able to get there. The next car that we got is Andy's 1G, and he's kind of prepping that thing. It's a 50 precision 55 millimeter turbo that's on it. So again, a steel rod engine. That's more of a street car. He drives that all over the place. And he's trying to set that up for more drag and drive events.
Okay.
That's his ultimate goal. I think that thing has gone a best of 1160s. He likes racing that thing in the 1150 index classes. So we're going to try to continue to campaign that car for that. Then we got Dylan Shen with the no MSG, the Wolf Evo, the black one with the purple intercooler. He has a steel rod engine in that one as well, which is funny. It was an engine setup that I had from my old Evo. So he ran that program in it, and it's wonderful to see what a decent chassis with power in it, what it can do. He ended up going high 8s with a 64, 66, which to my knowledge, I don't think there are many that have done that. So he's going to continue to race it at that level. He likes running in the 950 index class as well as some no ET, no prep type stuff.
Okay.
So that thing is quite the animal of a vehicle. We have a lot of fun with it. Now my personal stuff, I have a 1991 3000 GT. Again, a car that kind of came back. I owned it in, let's say, 2003 to 2006. Sold it to someone who then kind of took it apart, and then life happened. So he didn't really work on it for almost 10 years. It was all in pieces, and I got it back in 2018. And it's just been kind of putting it together ever since, and I wanted it, again, go back to that time where you can just drive a car and have that big old smile on your face when you hit the boost, right? And that 3000, it just does that. I was lucky to even get into the tens with it, and I literally drive it all over the place. And I was like, this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted something that I can just hot rod around, go to get my groceries, and run tens with. How cool is that? And they do it with 18-inch wheels. It's not even a race car.
And comfortable.
Yeah, it's comfortable-ish, right? Because most of the stuff is out of it. Let's not get it twisted. There's no heater in it. There's no wipers. There's none of that. When we say it's a street car, it's just because it has a plate and it's insured. Gotcha. But again, everybody's definition of street car is different, right?
For sure.
But it's just a blast to have that. The other vehicle I got it's my original front-wheel drive car that I campaigned from early 2000 all the way to like 2010. But I gave that car to my son when he was 5 years old, and I told him that if you get grades, I'll get you parts for it. So over the years we've been accumulating components for that. He's at the point right now where he's got a built short block. He's got a 35R turbo for it. Wow. So he basically got like components that I had from my other setups, but they weren't just given to him. He had to earn them. So I'm really excited for that one. It's going to come together here soon, so that maybe when he's 13 or 14 years old, I can get him behind the seat and go race him and really whoop his butt, because he thinks it's easy, right? So I can't wait to really put the hurt into that young man when when I line up next to him. So that's going to be a fun project. It's a 1990 front-wheel drive car. It's got a 10-point cage in it. It went 1040s was its best pass in 2009, somewhere around there, 2008, 2009, and then I kind of started messing with other things at that point. Then I also have a Mirage. Now, what's cool about this one? This used to belong to Mr. John Ripple at TRE Transmissions. He is quite the Colt connoisseur. He has a bunch of them, and he ended up getting this car to me where it was the original turbo Mirage that was in Car and Driver in 1991.
No kidding.
How cool is that? How cool is that, right? So we're gonna put an engine setup in there. It's all together. We just need to put a motor and transmission in it, and then we're gonna really take it back to those days when we had a good time, driving to the track, putting the slicks in the trunk, and just making some rips with that 16G that we used to run way back in the day. Because it's getting really popular now, these retro mods or period correct mods for the vehicle, and we kind of want to do that. It's like, well, let's see if we can go find a blue screen AFC and put it in there and see what the car can do. Yeah, those are some of the vehicles that we've got in our little group.
That's awesome.
Which are a lot of fun. They keep us occupied in these long winters here in Michigan.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Gives us a chance to kind of continue along our path and our passion for these vehicles.
That's great. Love that. I wish I lived closer to you guys.
You're welcome anytime. It's like I said, in my little corner of the internet, I try to be as positive as I can, but I also try to be as transparent as I can when it comes to what we do with these cars and how we go about building them, and really try to showcase just the effort and the passion for these vehicles, because gosh, they are so much fun, and there's so many things that you can learn from them, all the physics and science and metallurgy that goes behind this. That's the real part that fascinates me, because I'm a nerd at heart.
So, Warren, if somebody out there, they just bought a CSM or they're looking to get into a CSM, what advice would you give them for their build?
So the first thing I'd probably say is find the reason why you are doing this. You can give somebody a grocery list of components to put into something.
Mm-hmm.
But really asking somebody, why are you doing this, right? What makes you choose that platform or that car or that body? I think once you kind of get that fundamental principle in there, or why you're doing it and what you want to do with it, then you can kind of make some better decisions for it. Because the CSM platform, it's one of those platforms where everything is going to have to be fabricated or built yourself,
Yeah.
because you can't really go and buy subframes and this and that from somebody else and just bolt it on. Do you have companies that are starting to do that? But it's still going to require a lot of effort, because really those chassis were designed for 70, 80 horsepower.
Right.
And now you're trying to put, 600 plus horsepower through them. It can be really challenging. Now, the other part that I would tell someone is folks who typically buy these cars, they're on the bargain shopping list, right? They want to go to junkyards and pick up components from there to kind of piece these things together, which is kind of the charm of them, right? They're just cheap vehicles, but it's like people know that, okay, with a little bit of massaging, I can put a 4G in here
Right.
and really put a world of hurt to somebody. One of the things that I would definitely advise someone to do is go on the forums. There's this forum called 4G61t.org. There is a wealth of information in there, and it's like this. It's a group of people who's still active that they, like I said, cold people are. It's almost like cult following, right? They just love everything about them. But they'll even know what parts you need to put on there in order to go faster or get rid of bump steer. Like, take for example, who would have thought that you needed Elantra control arms at the bottom with 1G front hubs in order to get rid of bump steer? Like, who the hell thought of that, right? Some of these guys are going out to junkyards and just trying to interchange components into these things to make them go straight. So that's kind of the fun of it, right? So I definitely recommend 4G61t.org. It's a wonderful website that gives you a wealth of information for knowledge on these funky chassis. The other part of it is talk to some of the folks that do have Colts. They too can share a lot of the stuff that they've learned along the way. Specific things like if you wanted to all-wheel drive swap it, what are the things that you cut out of the existing chassis in order to fit a drive shaft in there? Or how did you bolt the rear subframe into the vehicle? What did you have to do to fit 1G shocks inside there? So that will kind of take away a lot of the headaches of measuring and trying to figure things out by yourself, because some of those things have already been done. Especially if you all-wheel drive swap them, there are many different ways that you can go about doing it. But there are only a few ways that actually work, that are tried and true.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So I always like to talk about the hypotheticals. Warren, you spoke about it a little bit. There's really not that many CSMs racing actively at the moment. Do you see any changes to the top 10 of the CSM list?
The big changes with that, I'll have to say it, right? As of right now, I'm one of the people that's at the top of the list, because everybody above me is retired or inactive, right? So I think personally for myself, I think I've got a good shot at going up the ranks. I don't want to discount anything that our little team does. We've got the drive, we've got the passion, we've got the will, and we've also got folks in our corner that really want to see us push forward and do better. So, I'm gonna give it a good swing, take a good swing at it, and see if I can move up the ranks. Matt Wheatley, he's the man. I love that guy. He's definitely got all the potential in the world to be at the top of that list. His platform and his chassis is well sorted. He's a guy that is meticulous. He's a very calculated individual. He makes very wise decisions about what components are in his car, and he always is very efficient in how he goes about doing it. So, with the knowledge that he has, along with I think Aaron Anderson and Matt Cowart that are in his team, those guys, they've got a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the CSM chassis. So I would not be surprised if Matt's going to be up there at the top of that list. I'd really love to see somebody from the States bring it back.
Yeah, for sure.
Get on the number one spot, because when Dan Okerman, when he was messing around with the Colts, he was really swinging for the fences, and he got rid of that vehicle, and I think it went to this young man down south who unfortunately passed away.
Oh.
And his name was Wesley, I think was his name. So I don't really know where that chassis is right now. The other one that you might be familiar with it's called the Catapult. It was one that was built by Shearer Fabrications way back in the day. So I don't know if that one would come back. Now, you got Raven Fab. There's another one that has the potential for being up there.
Yeah.
Was it Raven Fab? I think it is. So it's called the Raven, I think. It's like the flat black one out of Oregon, if memory serves me right.
Yeah, I think so.
He's got a good potential of being up there. I think that car's gone in the 8s as well. So there are a few players in the game, but it's just such a small group of folks that are doing it. I think it's if a bunch of us start going at it, and because we're all racers, it makes us all very competitive.
Mm.
I think you could start seeing a lot of movement on that list, which will be cool to see. Can't wait.
Definitely. It's one of my favorite things I'm looking forward to on the list is the CSM list is definitely going to have some shaking up here soon.
Absolutely. Can't wait. I mean, at the end of the day, I've still told Matt, if he lines up next to me, I'm going to gap that boy badly. Love you, Matt.
So, Warren, what events in 2023 can we come out and see Free Candy in action?
Oh, absolutely. Once we get the car all squared up, my goal is to kind of finish it up before April. Get out to testing, make sure it goes straight after all the changes that we have done to the chassis.
Yeah, for sure.
We typically do a lot of local, no prep, pour your own puddle type of races with all of the cars that are in our little group. So we try to do some of those, like no ET events here in the Detroit area. So we'll probably go to some of those. I know there are a bunch of IFOs that are around the Michigan area. There's some in Ohio and some in Illinois. So we're really going to have to see where all of the cars are in our little team, where they are like in their build journey. And if they're ready to party, we're definitely going to try and make it out to some of those events if our schedule allows. Of course, we're going to be at the Shootout. That's a staple for us. We've been going to that event. I think our first one was in 2002, 2003. We just love that event. It's the racing part of it is cool, but man, just being around our peer group and our friends, that's what makes it even more fun.
Right,
so
exactly.
We'll definitely be at the Shootout. I'm trying to think about what other events that we would like to go to. If we are competitive and if we run decent times, we'd like to see if we can qualify for World Cup finals. It's one of those events that has always been on our list, but we just never were able to put all the pieces of the puzzle together with our chassis in order to even qualify for an event like that. Now, unfortunately for the Colt, it's one of those vehicles that doesn't fit into a lot of classes, just the way that it's set up. So really have to take a look at the rule book and see if we can fit into any of those classes, because it would be wonderful to be able to set up that vehicle in a way to be competitive versus just being more of an exhibition vehicle.
Right, for sure.
Because like right now, before I mentioned, we're kind of like a little local rock band, right? You go out there to entertain and have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the charm of that vehicle. But at the same time, I'd love for it to be consistent enough that you could go to an event and go rounds without some major catastrophe happening. On the dash, I've got the sticky tape or masking tape that I have there, that I write how many passes are on that engine, because I'm just like, it's going to be a situation where 3 passes in, I'm going to break something or something's not going to go my way, but at the same time, I'd like it for it to be a little bit more consistent than that.
For sure.
So those are the goals, at least for 2023.
What about, Warren, wouldn't the Colt fit into the Mean Street in World Cup?
It might.
I know Tony Marks fit his 1G in there.
So, Tony's the man. I love that guy. I think that turbo was like a 68 millimeter, 6870, I think is what he had on there.
Switch, yeah.
Or maybe it was smaller than that. I think it was like that new 6470 that was in that class. So I'd really have to look and see where we fit there. I know there's some restrictions on modified suspension stuff. So, because the Colt didn't come that way,
right,
there might be finicky rules like that. So I'll have to kind of look, if we want to go to World Cup finals first, before even considering that, the car has to actually run the number and do it a bunch of times. So that's the first part of trying to even think about going to World Cup finals. Once it does that, then I think we can start looking at the rule book and maybe updating the turbo that's on there to some newer tech, so that we can fit into some of these classes.
Gotcha.
So
I don't know for sure, but I would say you'd probably be the first Colt at World Cup.
Oh, that would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yes. I would love to see it pull up on the line, and I love being in the stands and people go, "What the heck is that?"
That's something that's about to put a hurting on you, is what that is.
So, Warren, where can people follow you and follow the Antilag cars and kind of keep up with everybody?
Oh, sure. So we're on all of the social media stuff. We've got Instagram and Facebook, and even we have a little YouTube channel. We don't have a lot of stuff on there, but I'm going to start putting more things on there. But mostly on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Antilag200. It's really a section where, we put a lot of pictures and stuff up of projects that we're working on. There's even personal stuff in there because, it's not just about cars, it's about life too.
Right.
So if folks wanted to come in and see a day in what some of the things that I do or what some of the things that the team does, it's all on that Instagram handle of Antilag200. We also got my personal Facebook set up where folks can come in and kind of see some of the things that we do, but that also translates directly from Instagram. Antilag Racing is a little side gig for us, so we sell a few components here and there. We sell merchandise like T-shirts and that type of thing. So if you were interested in some of that type of stuff, you could go to our website, which is www.antilag200.com. It's got some different goodies in there that really kind of keep the program going. Those are most of the parts where people can find us. Hopefully maybe one day we can get onto some of these other platforms like TikTok and I don't know what else these young little whippersnappers are on these days, so we can kind of increase our branding. We're really trying to trying to brand ourselves as just a group of guys that like wrenching on these things and just going out racing and having a good time with our friends.
Just want to keep them alive.
That's right, and just continue our work with showing drive and passion in highlighting that to people, because it's so important just to really let people know why you are doing that, right? And today social media allows you or gives you that opportunity to showcase that. So that's kind of what we hope we can gain by some of our stories and our posts, good or bad, highs and lows. They all need to be there, because that's part of the process that's going to get us to what our eventual goals will be.
Heck yeah. So, Warren, I always give people a chance to give a shout out to anybody who's got them where they are, or to kind of get their car where it is on the list. Is there anybody you want to give a shout out to?
Oh man, you might as well grab the chair and lay back, because this is going to be a long one.
Hit me.
First and foremost, I'd love to give a big shout out to my son. He's such a huge motivator for me. He every day that young man wakes up, I look at his beautiful face and I was like, man, I got to try harder. I got to do better. I got to show this young man all of these things so that, he can look at that and say, well, if my dad doesn't give up, then I'm not going to give up. So, first I got to give a shout out to my son. The big thing is I can't wait for his car to be done and we can go to the track together, race together, and I can whoop his butt and it'll be great, So really looking forward to that. Second group of people I'd love to thank and give a big shout out to is my team. My team here at Antilag Racing. I can't do this stuff alone. That's just not possible. Jeremy, Andy, Dylan, and Kevin, we see each other every day. Actually, Jeremy and Andy just walked into my house and they got beers in their hands. So, you can't really do this stuff alone. You need folks around you that are going to share the same goals and have the same desires and passions that you do in order to move forward. So, the team that I'm in, man, you can't get any better than that. Best out there. We all love bathing in transmission fluid and being under cars with all the rust falling in your face. That's what we love doing. They're laughing because they might disagree with that, but love to thank my team and everything that they do for the program. Of course, Kigley Racing can be where we are without Kigley Racing. Kevin and Aaron are really pillars of the community. They are instrumental in all of the aspects of where the Colt is today. From tuning stuff to ideas with the engine. We use all kinds of components that Kevin has made and built and that are essential for making this car go forward.
Absolutely.
They really deserve all the kudos and all the support from the community and even other communities, because they truly want to see you succeed as not only as a person but also as a racer. And it's like, how can we make you go faster? And Kevin and Aaron are just instrumental in that. So big shout out to those guys. Of course, there's Force Engineering. I always told myself that I will publicly never admit that Tyler is the man, but hopefully you can edit that part out of this podcast. But no, Tyler Hessing from Force Engineering, he is just such a smart dude. He is very knowledgeable. He builds all of our engines, all of our cylinder heads. He's another instrumental part in the program. It's not only from my car, but also Jeremy, Andy's, and Dylan. So just Force Engineering for sure. Wonderful company to deal with, and he's a great friend as well. We use his dyno facility all the time for any improvements that we have on our vehicles. So he's a huge person that's in our corner too. Then of course we got FTY Racing, Scott Glassbrook. Scott and I have been friends for a long time. He was instrumental in a lot of the things with the car. He did a lot of the things with the roll cage on the Colt. We made all the carbon fiber stuff, like the carbon fiber roof, was all done through Scott. We used some of his technology that he has developed. He has a high-speed data logger that he put together that we use on the vehicle, which is instrumental in giving us data on things that other ECUs may not be able to capture fast enough. So definitely a big shout out to FTY Racing. Then my main man, John Ripple from TRE Transmissions. We've been working with John for many, many years, and that guy has a passion for these gearboxes. So much of a passion that he's like, don't put too much power in them because I don't want you to ruin my pretty gears. So John Ripple, TRE, and Aaron, those guys, they kick butt. They really do rock. Now I've got to thank Magnus Motorsports. Marco is a great OG of the community. I have lots of his components on that, even a few special pieces in there to allow us to run the mechanical fuel pump on the vehicle. Because anything with these cars you got to make yourself, right. So because you just can't buy off the shelf stuff. So big shout out to Magnus Motorsports on all the things that he's developed in the community and continues to do so. I also like to thank all the OGs, so like Marco, Shepard, Busher, you got, I think, Bean Fab. Those guys were the pioneers in the community. Tim Schweitzer, for example. Those guys really showed what you needed to do in order to get all of these numbers. I mean, Shep went sevens, 15 years ago, if memory serves me right? Yeah. So kudos to those guys for being the pioneers in the community and allowing, now just privateers to be able to go out there and run insane times or make all the horsepower out there.
Yeah.
So kudos to the OGs. The DSM community, like I said, I'm really blessed to have customers and people out there in the community that support what we do. Without those support of those guys, we wouldn't be where we are today too, because some of those customers have now turned into family. Folks like Richard Ong, Tony Marks, Aaron Gregory. The list goes on. It's like I never in a million years would have thought that people would be buying parts from us and using them on their cars. Yeah. And it's like they've gone from customers to truly family, friends that you can pick up the phone and call and eat food with. It's just amazing, So I'm truly blessed to have that, to have the DSM community just supporting us, and it's like they're fans, right? It's like you think that when they see you, you almost feel so lifted and so special because they make you feel warm and loved and cared for. So right. A huge shout out to the DSM community. And I got to thank you, MitsuTimes, for continuing on your path and really just bringing the whole community together and placing all these times and data in one collective area so that folks can see, who's at the top of the list, what do I need to do for improvements, what are the different setups that are allowing us to get those types of times. And these podcasts that you do, they're fantastic. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
With that, you're doing a phenomenal job and you're truly an asset to the community. And lastly, but most importantly, I'd really, really like to thank my cousin, Ram Kumar, for all the work that he does, because that guy is really, really hard on parts. And through all the things that he has broken and destroyed, I don't like him that much because he cost me a lot of money. But he has taught me that, hey, if you break something, we can figure out the problem and we can continue on our path. I'm still going to have some words with him about the choice of a tire that he wears at the racetrack. Right. But yeah, really like to give a big shout out to Ram Kumar. That guy has broken lots of stuff, but because of him, we were able to get in the 8s as well.
I still haven't seen you guys together yet.
He's a sneaky fellow. Every time that he has to do any work, he just disappears, and then we just see him show up in a Speedo or something.
All right, Warren. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I want to say big congrats on being a nominee for the fan favorite.
I'm honored.
I
Absolutely
hope that
honored.
you take it home.
That's it, man. I'm just honored to be on that list. Can't even believe that it got on the list. So that was wonderful to see. Whoever wins that award, it's the principle behind it. Tom Noonan is a great man. I hope rest his soul in peace, but I hope he's doing okay up there, and looking down on all of us, and pushing us forward to get better times.
Definitely.
So,
all right,
appreciate
Warren.
it.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, like I said, and I can't wait to see the Free Candy Machine back in action. Hopefully, I'll get an update from you soon.
100%. I'll be out there. Thank you so much again.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Okay, you too. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.